sort of at the halfway point now for most teams, just over for some, depending on how the schedule has rolled out. And let's kind of discuss which teams have been the biggest surprise so far, both good and bad, right? I mean, I put the grades up on Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com, so we can have a look through those. I've kind of put it into different sections. That seemed the best way to figure it out. Kind of the strugglers, the teams who are underachieving, the teams who are figuring it out as we get to the second half of the season, and then the big winners so far. But Nick, I'm going to come to you first. When we look at teams who have struggled the most and kind of who is the most surprising, do you agree with some of the teams I put in there? And what are your take on the teams who have hit the midway point of the season and would definitely want the first half of the season back, right?
Yeah, I mostly agree. I think that for me, there have been, without going to the big name guys, I have to say that every time I look at the table, I continue to be surprised to see Leicester City where they are. And I know Madison's been injured, but we've seen other teams deal with injuries. It feels like I expected more out of Brendan Rodgers, who I've given kind of a benefit of the doubt. And I know he's been a good kind of servant to them and not throwing them under the bus transfer-wise, but I still can't quite believe we're seeing a team with that much talent down there at 14th, because it's not like where you look at Liverpool and Chelsea and you say, you know what, there's a lot of injuries there. There are some old pieces, or so in Chelsea's case, pieces they had to move on from because of contractual stuff and an ownership takeover. And it's also not like West Ham, who I think have been way better than their table footing. It's just have been unlucky. Leicester seems like they deserve to be where they are, and that makes the disappointment even stranger to me.
So, Andy, the struggle is I gave Southampton and Everton both Fs, the only two teams down there. The two bottom teams at the table had managerial changes now, both of them. Kind of mixed situations for them with the players they bought or the players they cannot buy and the players they're left with both those teams. But Nick brought it up there. West Ham, I put them in there as well, a D- for them and Leicester City. Then I have Chelsea as a D- in that group of strugglers at the bottom. I mean, is that a bit harsh? What do you think about the teams that have struggled?
A D- feels a little kind for Chelsea. Honestly, if you so I'm looking at some of the numbers here. Bottom half in the Premier League in expected goals. Almost bottom half. They are 10th in expected goals against. Bottom half in expected goals difference. We're talking about Chelsea here. I mean, how expensive has that squad been to build over the years? And I know they have a ton of injuries. I know there was a managerial change, but I think a lot of people had an idea, and Nick is correct. The ownership change, in the summer obviously affected every aspect of the club and how it was operated and who was kept and who was let go or who left on their own accord. But I think it was pretty clear that Tuchel probably needed to go in the summer, not 7 or 8 or 10 games into the season, and then you bring Graham Potter in. You give a manager like Graham Potter, who's so detail oriented, a preseason to work with a new squad and implement his ideas. And I think this season looks a lot different from Chelsea. So all of the different factors at play there lead me to be more shocked at what Chelsea have done in the first half of the season than anybody else.
Yeah, what about the next section? I've got the underachievers, and I've got Leeds and Wolves there with Ds. I've got Crystal Palace with a C-, Bournemouth with a C. They've kind of done slightly better than expected, I think it's fair to say, but they're still kind of regressing now towards relegation zone. But Liverpool are there with a D as well. And Nick, do you think that's actually a little bit, like Andy said about Chelsea, that maybe a bit too generous on Liverpool, considering how good they have been and kind of how far they've fallen so far this season? Or is that, again, just injuries, loss of form, and the ownership situation as well, not quite being figured out long term? Do you think that's all playing into Liverpool's kind of general malaise around them, I guess, this season? I remember being at Craven Cottage on the open day of the season, and they just didn't look to have that spark. And I keep thinking back to that game, and they've kind of done that time and time again this season. No consistency with Liverpool, right?
Yeah, I think there's a reason that you're seeing a kind of flummoxed Jurgen Klopp when he comes to do his post-game pressers, because I do think they have real issues at midfield. But Nunez was a good buy, and the injuries matter as well. But when you have a reputation like a Jurgen Klopp, you're supposed to have injuries, and that keeps you from reaching second or being in the title race. It shouldn't have you down in 9th. And I think that's really catching them off guard. I do want to say this at some point, and this goes down to roster construction again. They and Man City, just like we've seen at Real Madrid and Barcelona over the years, they have played a lot of games. And that's why you see him rage against the international schedule. I look at this group, however, that you have, the underachievers, and I think all of them could become achievers in the second half of the season, especially now that Bournemouth appears to have bought 2 attackers, which is nice. I mean, something they probably needed.
Absolutely. And then we look at the next segment. I've kind of gone with the teams figuring it out. So first half wasn't great. Second half looks like it's going to be a lot better for them, and they kind of turned the corner. So Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa, B- is in there. Tottenham just a solid B, I think very up and down. But when you actually think about it, right around where they probably should be, battling to finish in the top 4. And then I got Man City and Man United, both at B+. I think, again, maybe even I'm being a bit too harsh on Man United because I think their comeback has been one of the stories of the season so far, Andy. Mm-hmm. So any surprises in there for you on teams who have figured it out, and any kind of big predictions for those teams in the second half of the season? Now they have got the right manager, the right system, the right players in.
Yeah, a couple of these teams are difficult to kind of grade on the first half of the season because the first quarter of the season was one thing and the second quarter of the season has been another, and it's really changed. Aston Villa, I think, is probably, United because of who they are and just the exposure of the club. But to me, Villa has been just as much of a big turnaround and a quick, complete, sharp U-turn ever since Unai Emery came in. He is, looking at it here, 5 games. He's got 3 wins, a draw, and a loss. Like, really, really solid so far under him. He's got them playing very good defensively. I think we all expected that from the time he was at Arsenal, what we saw from him at Villarreal as well. Like, those teams always just defended incredibly well, and it's why they had so much success in kind of that second-tier European competition, Europa League, and United as well. Ten Hag, I think, it is hard to not look at United's season and say, just getting rid of Ronaldo was the turning point. And you can credit Ten Hag for winning the battle and for having the strength to push on through that entire ordeal. But he has them playing incredibly well right now. And that game against Arsenal over the weekend, one of the most entertaining games we'll see all weekend. And I think said a lot about the future of both of those clubs and how, as good as they both look right now, kind of comparative to where they've been the last few years, I think they're going to be a lot better. Certainly 12 and 18 and 24 months from now, but even probably just 6 months, I think we'll see a lot of growth from both of them.
I think Man City, a quick word on them as well. It's weird to say that they're figuring it out, but it has been a kind of strange opening half of the season for them. And I think that comeback win against Tottenham and Pep Guardiola's comments after that saying he wants to see desire from the fans and calling out the players. And that just really seemed like a big moment in their season. He does that, every other season, probably just to kick everyone up the backside and say, hey, we can't take this for granted. We're a great team. We've won trophies. We win a lot, but we need to be better. And he said it, we're not going to catch Arsenal if we keep playing like this, even after a big comeback win. So that, for me, is a big point in Man City's season and gives me a lot of hope for them that they're going to go on one of these late season surges again, like they seem to, and they have that hunger and belief back. So yeah, just a quick point on that. But the big winners so far segment in terms of the 5 teams who really are top of the class, Nick Mendola, I've gone with Brentford and Fulham with solid A's. Obviously, both teams are really, really pushing for European qualification. Your Newcastle United, Brighton, and Arsenal, they are the top dogs. Give them A+, all 3 of those teams. And which one of those teams has really surprised you the most, I guess, is the question I'm thinking about. Because, I think we all thought all of those teams would have good seasons, but not quite to the level that they have been really ripping it up so far. So very impressive from those three teams. But who surprised you the most?
Well, if we're really looking into the past being predictive, then the biggest surprise is Fulham. I have to think that seeing them where they are on the table, by the way, consecutive 1-0 losses against Newcastle and Spurs, in which they were hell to play against. Paulinho has a nasty streak. First of all, I thought he could have been sent off. Second of all, I thought he could have been the reason that Heung-min Son got sent off. So they've been really scrappy, and they've shown an attitude that I thought we were going to see the last time they came up, when they had Zambo Anguissa, when they had bought Jean-Michel Seri. I thought we were going to see that from Fulham last time, and now they're getting that, plus Mitrovic scoring. And I guess, looking down at your list, the success notes of Brentford, Fulham, even Tottenham are getting old-fashioned, prolific center forward play.
Yep.
Absolutely. Andy, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it still does carry you today if you've got that one that talisman up top that you can count on for reliable goals. But you're always an injury away from the season kind of going a different direction. I think Harry Kane and Spurs have been a good example of that over the years. I can't believe you didn't pick Newcastle, Nick, and I know why you didn't, because you don't want to be that guy. It's your team and all. But let's think about this. Since they've come back to the Premier League, 10th, 13th, 13th, 12th, 11th. Currently, right now, if the season were to end today, they would be in the Champions League, sitting third. The gap, or the leap that you have to make to go from mid-table, even chasing European qualification, even in European qualification, to being a legitimate Champions League contender and a team at the halfway point that is sitting not just in fourth, but in third. I think that gap from the haves to the have-nots, if you will, not that there are any have-nots in the Premier League, just given the money that's available. But that gap right there is as large as anything that exists. And it's why clubs like Tottenham took years to get through after knocking on that door. It's why Arsenal have found it so difficult to get back into there. It's why Liverpool, when they were in their down period, they found it. So that gap right there is so massive. And you are one or two players away, a positive signing or a negative signing away from being much, much closer or much, much further in that kind of race. And so to me, the fact that they've done what they've done so quickly without bringing in a massive, incredible name, they've spent money, they've got a smart coach. They're just, I don't know. It seems like this team has staying power that I didn't see at the start of the season.
Well, so here's,
you look at the signings, right? Like Nick Pope, Trippier, Botman, Bruno Guimaraes, all very just savvy, sensible signings that don't really, they don't steal the headlines, do they? But then when you put them all together in a solid team unit like Eddie Howe's created, it's so hard to play against, so hard to score against. And it was just the start of the spending. Of course it is. There's going to be bigger names and incredible players coming in that do get in the Champions League. But it's just, if it's a taster of what's to come, then that is the biggest surprise, I think, out of all those teams. Because maybe Fulham, I think, will drop off a little bit, but you can see Newcastle sustaining this throughout the rest of the season. And Brighton built it last season. De Zerbi's done a great job at just continuing Potter's work and adding an extra attacking edge to it. And Brentford, again, they've stepped up, but not as far as Andy said as Newcastle. And Arsenal, again, very impressive. We'll talk a lot about them, I'm sure, Nick, but they, taken that next step from just being potentially a top 4 team to definitely a top 4 team and maybe even winning the title team. So, a lot of progress from these teams. But go ahead, Nick. What's your point?
No, I was just going to say I would have wanted to say Newcastle because Isak hasn't played a ton and looked decent when he has, and Shelvey hasn't played at all. The only thing I would want to add, though, is the reason I wouldn't pick them, and I will pick them to finish high, is because I look at where they are. The same thing with Brighton, same thing with Fulham, maybe even same thing with Brentford, who I'm really impressed by. They're there because Liverpool and Chelsea have, for lack of a better term, puked a little. And if Liverpool and Chelsea are even a little bit more adjusted, or Nunez hits the ground running, and those are all conditionals, and Newcastle shouldn't be downgraded because they have done what they've done. But I would have expected Newcastle to be hanging around 7th right now, and they're in 4th instead. And even Tottenham, who you guys know, Andy yelled at me for it early in the season, I thought they could make the jump this year based on Conte and Kane. And so I think they have risen up the table just by being consistent. Most times I don't know that that's good enough to still sit 3rd or 4th.
Oh, yeah. My big prediction for the second half of the season is I really think that Liverpool and Chelsea are in for a tough time. I don't think I can see them come surging back and, all of a sudden being 4th or 5th at the end of the season. I just think some of these issues that they're dealing with are very, very tough ones to solve. With Liverpool's midfield issue, I still don't think if you add an extra midfielder there, it solves a lot of the problems about the high pressing and the intensity. And then I think Chelsea as well, there's just so much going on, so many new players, a manager that at his previous teams took a long time to bed in his philosophy, and it worked in the end, but they're going to have to be really patient with Graham Potter.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.